Thank you for listening in to Conversations with Alison J, The Journey to Here. Please remember to subscribe, hit the like button and share. Hello and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Alison J, The Journey to Here. I'm your host, Alison J. Today we're going to be talking about financial literacy with Dr. Melody Bell. Dr. Bell is the founder and CEO of Financial Beginnings. Financial Beginnings was founded in Portland, Oregon in 2005 to fill an education gap that existed in local schools. Despite a growing need in educating young people about personal finance, few area schools at the time offered financial literacy curricula. Dr. Bell was inspired to launch a financial literacy nonprofit through her experience working in several facets of the financial industry. She repeatedly encountered individuals who had failed to properly protect themselves financially, leaving little money for savings and personal security, and delaying life goals such as higher education, retirement, and home ownership. Firmly believing that sound financial decisions are a result of early education, Dr. Bell was determined to create an organization that provides unbiased personal financial education to young people. Shortly after founding Financial Beginnings, she expanded to serve both youth and adults, adding programming to educate and empower elementary school, middle school, and high school students, as well as high-risk college students, financially vulnerable populations, and Spanish-speaking participants. Financial Beginnings launched regionally in 2014 with the opening of its satellite office in Seattle and then nationally in 2017. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Bell, on Conversations with Alison J, The Journey to Here. Welcome.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I definitely love any chance I can get to be able to talk to like-minded individuals and share what we know in our story.
Thank you for joining us. Financial literacy is something that I have been quite passionate about because of how it's affected my own life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all have our own stories for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of the things I was there like, if I knew back then what I know now, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And because my own story is, I remember, so in the UK, I don't know if they still do it now, but they had what we call work experience, where you get a placement in a job for 2 weeks. The only thing is you don't get paid. Sometimes they will pay like your travel and expenses and things like that. And I had one in a bank. It's a very well-known high street bank over there. And I did so well that they said, right, when you leave school, we've got a job for you. They held a position for me. Like,
awesome.
This is great. This is great. So I went, and at the time, if I say the name of the account, those of us that are old enough to remember may know the bank. So what came with this particular account was a Visa card, a MasterCard, and a check guarantee card of up to, I think it was up to £100. So, and I don't know if many people even remember what a check guarantee card is now, but basically what it is, as long as you have this card, when you write the check, even if you don't have the funds in your account, it will guarantee that check up to the amounts. So yeah, so my check guarantee card was £100, and I think over time it went up to £250. So imagine, so I am not even 18 years old yet, and I have a Visa card, a MasterCard, a checkbook, and a check guarantee card. Oh, and that account also came with an overdraft.
Oh, in addition to the check guarantee.
Yeah,
wow.
So I had all of those things, and I had no idea what any of it meant. 17, it was a case of, hold on, wait a second. I've just been given all of this money.
Yeah, right.
I had no clue about saving up for my, like, for retirement and my pension, I had no clue about interest and interest rates or anything like that. And because I was brand new into the working world and had all of this line of credit available to me working for a bank, guess what? I was always also able to get credit.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was just a, a buy now, pay later thing. Again, had no clue about interest rates.
Yeah.
So you can imagine Alison got herself into a little bit of financial just a little bit.
Well, at least you had the job, so you were making some money. So.
But it wasn't the job. What I was making did not even begin to make a dent in what I had spent.
Mm-hmm.
And then the assistant manager, they would always do this thing, because back then everything wasn't computerized the way it is now. And they'd look at it, and he would always put, every week, this man was pulling me to the side to tell me that you're overdrawn. As you work for a bank, that's not good. And I didn't know what to do. I had no clue what to do. I struggled. I really, really struggled. So when I was looking into financial literacy and came across Financial Beginnings, it was just like hearing angels singing. There is something out there that can prevent a lot of children from becoming bad stewards of finances into adult bad stewards of finances.
Exactly.
So, Dr. Bell, if you wouldn't mind, if you would tell us a bit about your journey and what led you to starting and founding Financial Beginnings.
Yeah, so I grew up, we were very modest means in our family, and I saw the transition from lower to middle income with my own family when my mom graduated from college and I was 10 years old. And so, and for me, I was definitely well cared for. I had everything I need, but I did notice that the food got better when, after that. And there was definitely no question for Melody would go to college. She was a good student. Like, there was no question in that. And I do remember it was very pivotal to me in the senior year of high school, and my acceptance offers are coming in from the colleges, and then all of a sudden the financial aid offers are coming in, and I found, like, my parents and I were like pointing our fingers at each other. They're like, well, how are you going to pay for that? And I was like, well, I thought you were going to pay for that. And like, it didn't even dawn on me that they had just come into, like, being able to feel more financially independent themselves, that they were not saving for my college. And so I was really terrified of the student loan debt. So I actually took the route of going to the community college and working and financing, and then transitioning to the 4-year university. And was what put me through college is that I worked in collections. So kind of, similar to your experience getting into the finance industry at 17, I got into the finance industry calling people and it was a department store credit card. So it's like the worst of the worst, right? 23% interest, calling people saying, hey, that outfit you bought last year, you got to pay for that. And they're like, but it's out of style. And that's what put me through college. And I got interested in finance. I was one of those dorks at 18 that, set up an IRA, and I just thought that that's what people do. And so I majored in finance and ended up working in different facets of the financial industry, and was just seeing how people are ill prepared to enter adulthood and to manage their finances responsibly. And thought back to one of my friends that I worked in collections with, and he said, we really need to teach people at a young age. And so I thought about that, and I explored kind of, what's out there, and found that there was community need for this, and decided to go the nonprofit route, because I feel like it's something that we all need to wrap around. uncovering all the different facets of the financial industry. And so was very young. Like I said, I was a finance major and didn't know about nonprofits, didn't really know about education, and started financial beginnings and came to find out that, I was pretty good at both of those aspects, and did go back to school to get my MBA focusing on public administration, and then went on to get my doctorate in education. So now 16 years later, I feel qualified to do what I started 16 years ago.
Oh, that's amazing. And that's really, really heartwarming to hear, because honestly, even though it's been recognized now that there is a need for it, it's still very much lacking in schools and in education. So it's one of those strange things that, how is it that you can identify there's this need and there's this gap, but yet very little is being done to fill it? I mean, and I think to a certain extent, we all can be a conspiracy theorist, right? But it's one of those things where if you teach people how to manage their finances well, then there's no credit really, is there?
Yeah, I think it's, well, there's several aspects of it. There's us as parents, we sometimes don't feel comfortable with our own finances, let alone talking to our children about it. And when it comes to educators are not taught how to teach money. I mean, it's we're all very focused on the STEM or STEAM, and I think money is just one of those topics that we all kind of were taught not to talk about, and unfortunately, and it's just kind of it's now everywhere, and so yeah, I think it's too bad. And here, even in Oregon, where I am, when I was in high school, it was a required course to take personal finance, and they actually got rid of that requirement the year after. And so, like, we were going the wrong direction. Now, several states have actually brought back that a requirement like that. And so that's where I think it just kind of goes back to the community aspect of it. I don't think that it's not a matter necessarily that we don't want people to know. It's just it's kind of the blind leading the blind a little bit, and so, and if we don't know what we don't know, and we're not going to go seek it out if we don't know that we should be looking for it, and so that's where I think that it ends up becoming such an issue with that. And we're so caught up, it's too bad. I mean, I remember, like, so my grandparents was home economics. Like, I mean, there was, you were taught, about money and how to sew and, all of these different life skills. And, now, I have a daughter that recently graduated from high school, and, she went well beyond me with math. She's doing, trigonometry and all of those things, but they don't have those opportunities for those life skills anymore. And it's, I don't know, it's too bad.
And to your point, you just reminded me of something when you said home economics. I had a bit of flashback to when I was at school, and our home economics consisted of cooking and sewing. I actually don't remember outside of that anything else. So it was almost as though, like, and I'm not that old, so this would have been in the early 80s. So it was almost like that's still that same mentality where all the girls took home economics because we needed to learn how to cook and sew, and all the boys took like technical drawing and woodwork and metalwork. But I don't actually ever recall there being that bit in them that ties it together, that bit in the middle that actually taught finances.
Yeah.
And that expression, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Because now in 2005, you're starting financial beginnings because you see that there's a need for it. And we're now in 2021. And are we that much further forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes it's like, you feel like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? We have seen over the last, since 2005, that there is more of a recognition of the need for this. So, like I said, back in, probably in 2005, it was maybe 2 or 3 states that would require a course in it. Now there's actually a good handful, and most of the states do have, even if it's not a course, they have requirements that you have to teach about money. So so that's a positive. Now, some states aren't necessarily going about it a good way. They're saying, oh yeah, you need to offer it, and it can be after school or during lunch. Like, who's gonna want to go like to learn about money instead of eating your lunch?
Right?
Yeah. So yeah, that's where I think that we're seeing it. What I've also noticed in the progression for this is, even when financial beginnings started, I noticed there were a lot of the education out there didn't include topics like insurance, which is so important in protection. And then even now, you've seen now we're identity theft and fraud and these topics that, I'm talking about, cryptocurrencies and I was lecturing earlier today, and that was one of the topics the students wanted to know. And so there is a lot more out there. It's, how do we get the information in front of the people? And that's why we feel like going about it when they are young is so important, because, just like anything else, like having healthy eating habits, like you need to build the habit. And so you need to start building that for, saving at a young age and understanding how, the needs versus wants and how that progresses, as opposed to like, our situations where we're just kind of thrown out there. And the first time we're introduced to it is at 17, and we have no idea, like, what does this mean?
Yeah, for me, as you said that, I literally felt like that. It's that expression that they've had around for the past few years, making it rain. I felt like it was being made to rain on me, all this money that literally coming out of everywhere. Visa card, MasterCard, overdraft, checkbook, credit for this. I can go and walk into this store and get credit for that. I felt like a contestant on a game show by the time I was coming out with all of my bounty kind of thing. But nobody told me or explained to me, I should say, that it has to be paid back with interest. Because in my head, I'm thinking, oh, I can afford to pay it back because it's just this much divided by this many months, right? I didn't know interest. And you also mentioned about insurance, because again, wasn't really educated much on insurance until it came time for, I want to buy a car. You need insurance. To do what?
Again, exactly. And how much it covers.
Exactly. I was fairly young when I bought a car, and over in the UK, they have like fully comprehensive, then they have third party and third party fire and theft, and then just trying to figure it out. And then as you get older and then you move out and then you get renters insurance, it's like, oh, okay. And then you have homeowners insurance, it's like, oh, okay. And then talking, because over here they call it a 401k, in the UK it's called like your pension, and it's just like, oh, what, I have to prepare for that too now?
I know. Well, and think about like in your budget, how much of it goes to insurance. I mean, like you're talking about health insurance, auto insurance, or renter's insurance, depending on how you're living. And, if you have disability insurance, or, I mean, it's just, I mean, it adds up to a large portion of our budget.
It really does. And I'm glad you mentioned the word budget, because what I wanted to ask you as well is, without giving away too much of what your courses are, because if people want it, let them reach out to you and not get it for free,
Right. So, it is. That's the best part. It is free. So that's
okay, then let's have a lesson right here. So you heard it, folks. Financial Beginnings, free financial literacy courses. And like, if that's not amazing, or what? So what are some of the courses that you Financial Beginnings takes, or does, I should say, and what do you teach? What would you advise someone for example, if 17-year-old me came to you having gotten herself into this mess, how would you help me?
Yeah, so with financial beginnings, I mean, ideally, I want to meet your kindergarten self. I want to meet your 5-year-old self, and so I want to meet your teacher and have them bring these lessons into the classroom. And so, ideally, what we really hope is that we are partnering with schools and community groups. So it's a free program for the schools. And the schools can reach out to us to ask for our volunteers to go into the classroom. And many of those volunteers are financial professionals. So, bankers, financial advisors, CPAs, to deliver our lessons. So ideally, I'm going to see you, in elementary school, middle school, high school, and then, into college. So then we're reinforcing those lessons throughout. When it comes to what's happening now with the current learning environment is with COVID is that students aren't in the classroom. And so what we have done is we've also built out our programs into self-guided online courses. So then that could be, you and as a high school student, maybe your teacher has directed you to go through this course and provide a certificate of completion. Maybe your parents say, you know what, you need some lessons, go take this and direct it. And so you're still able to get those lessons. And even outside of financial beginnings, I teach at Portland State University, and it is the most popular course is personal finance, the most popular elective. And students come through this and they're wanting more. They had no idea. And it's a course that it's not theory. We are walking with them through. Let's check your credit score. Oh, is it where you want to be? How do we improve that? How do we create a budget? How do we start thinking about investing? And that's the thing is like, this morning I was teaching investing and I was like, they get so excited when they think is time is the best thing they have on their side. It's not, when you look at the future value of money, the best part of the equation is not the amount of money putting in, it's the amount of time you have for that money to compound. And so once they realize that it's not so out there, it's really exciting.
And that's the thing. I think when you're saying that once they realize it's not so out there, because I think, we're afraid of money. Why are we so afraid of it? It's almost as though, and when people say, well, I'm not afraid of money, but in another respect, maybe using the word afraid of money is not the right word, but there's just something about it. We don't want to talk about it. We're struggling to keep it because we keep spending it. So what is that when you're saying it's not so out there? What is it, this almost love-hate relationship we have with money and our finances?
Yeah, it's interesting too, because now doing this for so long and going through some market booms and busts, it's interesting to see how that is affecting our next generation. And what's interesting when you're thinking about, or when you're looking at money, what drives your one of the big factors that drives your relationship with money is not how you've experienced money, it's how you've seen money experienced by others. So you're seeing the previous generation, your parents. So when I started teaching in the late 2000s, that was when the stock market crashed, right? And the housing bubble. And these students are seeing the financial strain that their parents are going through. They're hearing how people are talking about how they lost their retirement in the stock market. And so, back then when I was teaching, I had to spend so much time overcoming that fear. Whereas now, stock market's been booming for a couple of years, right? So I got the students like, I'm all in. I'm going to be a day trader, and I got to pull them back and say, no, wait. And so it's what they're seeing, not necessarily what they're going through. And you see this, with previous generations, and like my grandparents did not go through the Great Depression, but they saw that and they had that memory in their mind. And so then my grandpa, every paycheck, would buy a savings bond. And it was after he passed years later, my grandma opens up the safety deposit box of all these expiring Series EE bonds, because he was just like so worried about that. And so it will be interesting to see what this means for the next generation. Now, when we see the students that went through the housing bubble and saw that, a benefit of that is those generations, they're really good savers. And so, but what we need to work on with them is they're scared of the stock market. And so they want to save it and just shove it all under the mattress. So we have to get them to overcome that and to understand, okay, let's talk about mutual funds and exchange traded funds. Let's talk about target date funds. Like, how do we make this easy to where you're still able to reap the benefits of that stocks and getting a better return, yet taking away some of the risks associated in that and diversifying. So yeah, it's interesting just that like you're talking about our relationship with money and what, you know, drives that for individuals and how it changes from generation to generation based on what we're seeing.
And I'm glad that you said that, because it brought a thought back to me about that generation. They're such good savers. Because when I think back to my mother and my grandmother, I wish I had the financial discipline that they do, because my mother, I remember my ex-husband used to say to me, did your mum win the lottery and didn't tell us? Because she was always like able to, without paying for things on credit, take care of things and pay for things. And it's like, where's she getting all of this money from? Like, but it's not that she won the lottery or anything like that. My mother just over the years has budgeted very well, learned how to manage her money, and she's learned how to budget and save and do things. And I think it's so interesting that without them actually telling us that's what they were doing, that those generations are actually better at stewarding their finances than we are, given all the technology that we have. However, it's still not safe to put it under the mattress, because supposing your house burns down, I mean, seriously, you know, because that's always been my concern. If something happens to the house or flood or fire damage or something, all that money's gone. But they had the right idea, so to speak, in budgeting and saving. It's just that, okay, let's do it. There's a better way to do that with your money.
Yeah, and I even have seen that with employees, to where they're really great at the savings, so they get the 401k, and then when they're given the option on what to invest it in, they put it in cash. And it's like, wait, but you're not even keeping up with inflation. You're not, you know, like you're losing money here. But there's just that fear of the market. And so and that's where, you know, today when I was talking with my students about investing, is so much of it, when it comes to it, is like us just managing our own emotions. And, you know, understanding that if you know you're the type that is going to get you really worked up on what the market's doing, don't be looking at your accounts every day, right? You know, and even, you know, it was, so last year at this time, the market was crashing because of COVID. And there were a lot of people that took that knee-jerk reaction to say, I gotta sell. And there was this, you know, frantic, you know, selling spree where, you know, my husband and I are looking at each other and we're like, everything's on sale. Like, what? let's buy, you know, let's buy more. Let's get more into our 401ks right now, because it's all on sale. Let's go. And so we have to learn how to manage those knee-jerk reactions, because our inclination is going to be to go against what is actually in the best interest of us.
As you say that, I couldn't help but laugh, because that is me, right? So a few years ago, I was introduced to foreign exchange trading. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll have a look, because I'm open to ideas and new business ideas and things like that. I'm not saying I'm going to jump into everything, but I'll at least listen.
Right.
So I was told about it, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'm somebody that travels regularly and has to exchange currency, so let me listen. And I listened to it, and it makes sense. I brought my mother along, and she was like, yep, I like it, love it. So my mother and I started to trade. Now I'm that person that I'm like, no, it's dropping. I'm jumping out. And my mom just will patiently sit there and watch it do its thing. Whereas me, I've jumped out, taken my money, run down the street or whatever. My mom's still just patiently just watching the market. So to your point, there are so many people. That's why I would make a horrible gambler, because I'm that person like, no. I've always said, I would rather spend money than lose money. I don't want to lose money. I'd rather spend it, because at least I can say I have this for my money. So I've always said I'd rather spend it than lose it. And so so getting involved in things like that, and investing in the stock market, and you're right, I've had to actually say, Alison, don't look at this thing too often, because you will drive yourself insane, in absolute sane. And then every morning I've had to stop the notifications, because every morning without fail, you get your email notification of your 401k, and you either see that green arrow going up or the red arrow going down. And especially during last year, when everything started to happen with the pandemic and the lockdowns, and just seeing all the red arrows, I can imagine how people were absolutely panicking, because you heard all these stories of we're headed, and then all the scaremongering, we're heading into another recession. Thousands and tens of thousands are being wiped off 401ks. And on top of everything else that was going on, did you find that people were actually going into some kind of depression just thinking about their finances and what was happening at that time?
Yeah, so I don't work directly with investors. I'm trying to get to you all before you start out and go out and investing. And a lot of my volunteers do, though. And I did. I mean, I just heard of so many stories of regret. I mean, and when you talk about what, financial, like there is a term, financial health, and it really is like your health gets very affected by your financial circumstances. And it's really too bad, I think, with how this is all played out over the last year, is that it really is it's making the gap even wider, right? I mean, so for myself, my budget was great over the last year, because we're not going out to eat, we're not traveling, they're like, my expenses went down. But then there's other individuals to where they have extra childcare, they have lost their job, and I mean, so much to where this is really, I feel like, increasing that disparaging, and it's, we're all, for very many reasons, we're all going to be scarred by this in one way or another, and many will be scarred due to the financial circumstances. I mean, it used to be, the rule of thumb was to teach you, hey, have 3 to 6 months of an emergency fund, right? We're 14 months into this. Like, I don't even know. I haven't wrapped my head around like what I'm going to recommend to people now.
And that's such a good point, because that's so true, because that is what we were taught. Have at least, like you said, 3 to 6 months. And I mean, because I remember it was March 12th, 2020, and just getting the communication that everybody take all of your equipment and everything home. We're going to be working from home indefinitely.
Right.
Now, that was March of 2020. Here we are, fast forward to May of 2021. And you've got some people that have not been able to go back because their places of business are still closed.
Right. Yeah, my office is empty.
Okay. And when you think about it, it really is, heartbreaking almost to know that you've got some people that end up in these positions literally through no fault of their own, because they did the right thing. They had that 3 to 6 months, but then, like you said, 14 months later, now what do you do? So yeah, it's I didn't even make that connection between the planning that we all do and this, and I like the fact that you said financial health, because it does affect your health. Because I know, for me, when I was in that time when it's just like tearing my hair, like, what am I going to do? It was one of those things where I remember my finances was the last thing I thought about at night. I woke up in the middle of the night with it on my mind, and it was on my mind first thing in the morning. So I knew that I obviously wasn't resting because I was stressed out about this. So it's amazing that you say something, you're going through something, but you don't make that connection.
Right.
Financial health does also affect your physical and your mental health.
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, there's in so much of that, I think, a connection that, we've even talked about this, and I was part of a committee here where it was all about health, and they actually had a subcommittee on financial health. And that was one of the things that, we're trying to come up with ideas on how do we incorporate this as more of a community aspect. And like one of the things that came up is like, when you go to the doctor, especially like the pediatrician with your children, and they ask like, oh, are they progressing here? Are they progressing there? But there's also things like, oh, have you opened them a bank account? And have you explored, different things? Like, how can we, kind of merge those together? And I imagine as an adult going to a physician, I don't think that they probably do explore enough of that to understand what are those root causes that are causing that anxiety and all of that.
Yeah, that's true, because to be honest with you, it's, when I go to my physician for my checkup and things like that, I'm not going to think to talk to him about, oh my gosh, the credit is killing me, the debt is killing me.
Right.
I just wouldn't stop to think about that. And so it's one of those things that it's really vital then, when you think about it on all those other aspects, how important what you do is. And like you said, you want to go back and speak to my 5-year-old self and get that conditioned and that programming and those habits, those good healthy habits, kind of like drummed into me, so to speak. And there's going to be some people that are going to learn that and still go off and do their thing, and that's fine. You can't help everybody, right? But you can at least try to get as many as you can.
Yes. And I think that too is also thinking about not just health, but, in relationships. I mean, money is one of the largest factors that spouses will argue about. And I think, it's important to understand. So even going back to my grandparents, to where my grandfather was so controlling and controlled all of the money, and kind of made my grandma feel like they were always on the brink of like, oh, I got to get the pension check. And so she ended up doing like side jobs that was her money that she could do what she wanted with. And I will tell you, she was so mad when, after he passed away, she found out how much money they had. And they were like, they had all this money. And I said, well, Grandma, like, he did this for you. And she's like, no, I'm sure he wanted to be buried with it. She was so mad at him. And so that's where, it's so important to make sure that those are joint conversations, and not letting one spouse manage all of the finances. And even my husband and I, we have separate finances, and then we pooled into a joint. And it's kind of nice, because it's where say that we go out to dinner, it's let me pay, this is out of my money. Or if I'm buying a Christmas gift for him, that's coming out of my money. And so, I think that's something, especially a lot of times as women, we tend to let, our spouse take care of the finances. And it's important that we keep our finger on that.
Yeah. And to your point again, we're saying as spouses, we tend to let our husbands take care of it, because again, that is the mentality that's been passed down, though, isn't it? Because if we think about it, the man used to go and he used to bring home the bacon, right? And you had like Susie Homemaker there with the house and the 2.5 children and the dog and the white picket fence, and she was always just so perfectly done by the time he came home, and fully dressed and with a little apron on and all the rest of it, while he came home from work and gave the paycheck. And to a certain degree, again, going back to the expression, the more things change, the more they stay the same. You still have a lot of that mentality and that attitude. And for example, some men have an issue with women making more money than them because the man is supposed to be making the money and the man is supposed to be controlling it, when actually no, because if we look at the instance of your grandparents, your grandmother, like, what enjoyment is there now that he's gone? They can't enjoy it together, you know. And I know she
Right.
joked about he probably wanted to be buried with it, but part of it, I you know, not knowing your grandparents, but you know, the fear of not having enough drove your grandfather to literally squirrel away all of these funds, because just so to have hold on to that security.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. And, you know, it was even it was the late 70s that, you know, we as women couldn't go get a credit card without our husbands. And, you know,
I
we're
didn't
still
know that.
facing, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and even now we're still facing that, you know, we're not making the same income as men in the comparable position. And you know, I think that yeah, and we have to advocate for ourselves and to have that control of our financial situation, even if we're doing it with a partner.
Yeah, because God forbid, and we've seen it in the movies so many times, and there's been a couple of instances where we've actually known people that this has happened to, where something has happened, the marriage has broken down, she's been left penniless because, and she didn't know what, and it's not just the marriage broken down, the partner, the husband's passed away, and she just
Mm-hmm.
had no clue. Do they have any money? Are they in any debt? How to manage things, because it's just literally like we just haven't taken control of finances as we should. Is that something that Financial Beginnings teaches?
Yeah, so for us, most of our programs are done in the school age, but we have found over the years, like our concepts or something, like people would constantly look at our high school information and be like, I don't know this. And so we have had more demand for adult programming. And so we do now have programming that is for adults. Now, the hard part again, and this is why I like operating with schools, is they're a captive audience. Those kiddos got to go to school, and I'm going to get that information to them. When you start talking about the adults and us voluntarily going to, you know, learn about money, we don't know what we don't know. We don't necessarily, you know, aren't going to go out and seek that information. And so that's where it's, you know, so great when we can have those community partnerships, go into the schools, work with other, you know, nonprofits that have those audiences that they're forced into it, and then they're so glad that they did it.
Yeah, I can well imagine, because to start out life without the stress and the threat of debt, and to start out having some sort of awareness and understanding of what you're going into when it comes time to, if you do buy a car and you buy it and you finance it, or you buy a home and a mortgage, you get a credit card, and like you mentioned earlier in the conversation, those store cards, because everybody's not aware, because you know what it's like. You get, I mean, when you get a credit card, you get a leaflet that's probably about this thick, right?
Yeah, the terms and conditions.
Yeah, and that's with all the terms and conditions, and it gives you the interest rates and all the rest of it. Who reads that? Like, who reads it? And we don't. But at least if you get them and you're teaching them, like, look, store credit cards, all you do, just look to see what the APR range is. Even if you don't read the rest, just look at that part of it. If you're going into a mortgage, understand like fixed rate interest, or, you know, interest only mortgages, or whatever the endowment only mortgages. I don't know if they have those types of mortgages over here. And just to know, even I heard a story the other day of somebody that went to buy a car, and they didn't know how to negotiate a good deal. They then drove the car to church, and somebody that happens to be a CPA saw it and was asking her about it. And when she told her, she's like, oh, no, no, no. They ripped you off, like good and proper, ripped you off. So they drove back to, fortunately, it was still within the 7-day period, drove her
Mm-hmm.
back, and they redid the whole thing. And because she had amazing credit as well. So it's not like she had bad credit why they had to give her the higher
Yeah.
interest rate. And again, that's something that a lot of people don't think about. The worse your credit, the higher the rate is going to be. When you think
Mm-hmm.
about it, well, shouldn't it be the other way around because it means at least I can afford to pay back? No, you are a bigger risk. And
Right.
so,
Exactly. Yeah.
right, so even stuff like that, people are not understanding. So they took it, so they went back to the showroom, they redid it all, and then they gave her some ridiculously low interest compared to what because she just accepted it because as far as she's concerned, they're going to do the right thing by her.
Right. Exactly.
She needed to get a car for work, so she did that. And then so it's also learning those other aspects of it as well, because in so many things we do, there's interest, there's varying interest rates and variables and all of that. And just to be aware, nobody's saying that, pick up the encyclopedia and browse through it and be an expert, but have some level of knowledge. Even and would you say it's not too late to learn?
Oh, for sure. And it was, so I'm so glad that your friend got to got to go back and redo it. I had a student, so I actually lectured on car purchases 2 weeks ago, and the student emailed me the next day, and she's like, "I bought a car last month, and I think that they really took me out, like threw me over the gold." And she's like, "Can I return it?" I was like, probably not. It's probably too late." Um, and so yeah, I think that and also understanding too, it's never too late. I made mistakes along the way, and learn, not feeling discouraged that it's too late to start, if it's saving for retirement, or to think about saving for a home, or reaching your goals. And so just hopefully we get that information earlier, and we avoid some of the mistakes that so many of us had. It's not like it's irreparable. You can still, you got to start somewhere, right? So just take that first step.
Yeah, and I think going back to what you were saying about you run programs for adults, and at least with the high school children, they're a captive audience. Do you think that's sometimes why adults don't attend because they're embarrassed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And actually, the way that we start our adult session as an icebreaker is we try to resonate with them, with their children. And so, instead of saying, "Oh, what do you want to learn? What do and say,
Mhm.
what do you wish to teach your children about money? What do you want to pass on to them?" And so then it takes that maybe embarrassment out of it,
Mhm.
or that, "Oh, I didn't go about it right," but it's like, what do you want to pass on to your children? And so it provides a really great opportunity. And that's where we do a lot of programs too, where we've got the kiddos in one area. So it could be like your church, where you've got the adults here, and then you've got the kiddos in another area. And so the parents are coming because of the kids, but then we're getting them too. And so it's a great opportunity to provide that education to the adults, where you're kind of almost tricking them into it through doing better for their children.
I like that, by any means necessary.
And it doesn't hurt if you throw in pizza.
Right, just get them any way you can to teach them about it. Because to be honest, it's not that, to be honest, they watch TV and learn worse stuff, right? Because I
Right.
mean, some of the things that are out there that they're picking up and repeating, it's just like, okay, not age appropriate. Learn to count your money. But it's just got some of the things
Well,
where.
oh, I was just going to say, I think one thing too, I recommend to us that have kiddos, is that our children are, I think we shelter them from this because we think they're not ready. And they are, and so I can tell you, like at age 4, I would go to the toy store with my daughter, and it would take twice as long if the money was hers for her to figure out how to, spend it compared to mine. She got it, right? And Elmo talks about save, spend, share, and and so I think we try to we shelter our children too much. And I'll take my husband works in finance too, and when my oldest turned 18, I was like, yeah, we need to talk to her about getting a credit card. He's like, no, she's not ready. I was like, like, this is what we instill, and that she needs to establish credit, and you're trying to shelter our own child, and this is like our life's work.
But that goes back to what you were saying, though. Even though that is the field that you are in, excuse me, there's still that emotional attachment, isn't there, to maybe not just the money, but also as the parent, just thinking that, oh, they're not ready. But when you think about it, okay, if they're not ready at 18, when will they be ready?
Right. And 2/3 of university students are signing student loan promissory notes, like they're taking that debt on. They are, asked every time they go to the department store if they want to get that credit card. Or they're going to get exposed to it, and so I would much rather have them exposed to it under my watch to help them work through that. And so, like, with my oldest, I got sick of constantly paying her back for like running to the store and stuff like that. And so I got her as an authorized user on our credit card. It was great. It started establishing credit for her. It taught her responsibility. It's allowing me the opportunity to watch and look through that. And I guess another point too, as parents, is even though this is my life's work, and I, talk about this ad nauseum with my children, they're going to listen to you over me on talking about money, because you're somebody new, and so that's the kind of nice aspect too of, having volunteers, and many of them being in the finance industry. It's not their teacher that's talking to them every day, or their parents. They're like, this is an expert. They really know. And so there's that aspect of it too. It's just, having somebody else teach it to them.
It's, you said something that it was just like, wow, it took me to a flashback to a podcast I was actually listening to last week. And it wasn't even talking about finances, it was talking about parenting. And the young lady, and this is a young lady in the UK. So the fact that this is the same thing, almost verbatim, it's like your children are going, most of the time, your children are not going to listen to you, they'll listen to someone else. So you just say the same thing on a totally different topic. So there must be so much to be said for that, to finding that good influence for your children, to talk to them about their finances, so that when they are stepping out and doing things, they're doing it from a place of being informed and not from a place of ignorance that will then lead them into, financial difficulties down the line. Because when you think about it, your credit score just dictates so much of your life. There's some jobs you can't even get if your credit score is not good.
Yeah, and your car insurance in some states is more expensive if you have a poor credit score. And like you said, it can keep you from employment. It affects those interest rates that you're going to be paying, and so much of it just lies on that little number.
That little number that you have to work so hard to maintain above that certain range. And that's just so interesting. So you mentioned that you offer adult courses. Can you just touch a bit on what those are and how people can get access to them?
Yeah, so our program for adults is called Forward, and this really is an opportunity to for somebody that's like, I'm not where I want to be, and maybe I have made some of those mistakes, and so we're going to go through and really kind of start back from the ground up to let's look at the budget. Let's understand what are those triggers that are exhausting my expenses, that are maybe unnecessary. Did I make some mistakes on credit? How do I repair that and start taking that process forward? And so for all of our programs, they can be found online. It's financialbeginnings.org. We do have affiliate offices throughout the country. And so if you are operating in one of those markets where we have local people, we're able to connect you with those volunteers and those programs. Even if you're in a state where we don't have a local office, we still have all the materials available for free to download. So you still have access to all that information. And quite honestly, you may find, like, even if you have financial individuals that, say it's at your local bank or credit union or a financial advisor or whatnot, I mean, you could take those materials and talk to them and say, hey, can you walk me through some of that information? It's really very, very easy and user friendly in that respect.
Excellent, great stuff. So you can be found in Portland, Oregon. You mentioned your website, financialbeginnings.org. So great.
Yeah.
And are there any other programs that you run or you offer, so you do outside of what's just been mentioned?
Yeah, so we do have boots on the ground in Oregon, Washington, California, and we jumped over to Nebraska. But then, like I said, we do offer programs throughout, and even now we're so used to this virtual environment. I mean, we were doing some programming for Florida, and so we're definitely like the opposite ends of the country, and so we are able to also connect with people virtually now, since we're also used to the Zoom environment.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. So Dr. Melody Bell, I just want to thank you for sharing with us and giving us some insight into how we can lead a life living in good financial health, and just letting us know where we can find you. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. I've learned something today.
I really enjoyed this. This is a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to going onto your website and seeing what I can use to impart into my own life and impart into the lives of the young people that are around me also.
Awesome. Thank you.
You are very welcome. Thank you so much, Dr. Bell. Take care.